106.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 6 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Julie Maloney is on the phone. We're going to talk about her book, A Matter of Chance. It's a suspense novel, but in addition to that, we're talking about writing, and specifically you ladies writing. Robin, you're a lady,
Yes.
and you are a writer, so you'll fit right in with this. Julie Maloney is the founder and director of Women Reading Aloud, which is a nonprofit organization devoted to promoting women writers. She's a poet, a choreographer, the artistic director of the Julie Maloney Dance Company. And again, her book is A Matter of Chance. Bringing women writers together and giving them a supportive community to grow is the topic. So it's kind of twofold. We'll talk about the book as well as the mission of this interview. Julie, good morning. Thank you for being on the air with us today.
Oh, thanks, Larry and Robin, for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. Where are you?
I'm actually in New Jersey.
In New Jersey. Robin's son lives over there.
Yep.
Oh, yes, we're in New Jersey.
Clifton.
Oh, okay. So I'm actually in a little bit south. I'm closer to a little closer to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
How's the weather there today?
It is raining cats and dogs here.
So let's talk about the book first, and then I want to kind of broaden it to what you do and how different
Sure.
it is for a woman to be a writer this day and age and as a man. Tell me the story in a matter of chance, like a thumbnail sketch of the story.
Sure. A Matter of Chance is one woman's journey that takes place over 5 years as she searches for her missing child. But along the way, what happens is she transforms herself by painting her way through grief. She connects to a hidden passion, and she does become an internationally recognized artist. But she does deal with guilt as she finds herself being thrust into the limelight, and she has to ask her question, did this happen because her daughter was taken from her?
Oh, wow.
And when you were having the story, you actually went to Germany for your research.
Yes, I did, Robin. I went to Cologne, Germany, because I had discovered this incredible drawing at the Morgan Library by the artist Kata Kollwitz. And Kollwitz is actually Germany's most revered artist. And there are 2 museums dedicated solely to her work. She's that popular. So I went to Cologne, and I have to tell you both that it was such an emotional experience just to walk into that museum and to be surrounded by this artist's work, because she actually became the muse for this story.
Really? Okay. So the art became. Do we know in advance, or does it ruin the story to find out what happened to? It's Vinny, right? The
Yes,
little girl. Okay.
Vinny is the child. Yes.
Do we know in advance, or does that ruin the story if you answer that question?
Do you know that Maddie does become an artist? No, that doesn't ruin the story.
No.
I can't give too many spoilers, but I love the question that you're asking.
Okay.
I do love the question because actually the story takes place, as I said, over 5 years. So Maddie transforms herself, and she's taken under the mentorship of a neighbor who is a recognized artist and just puts a brush in her hand. And Maddie realizes that maybe this might help her move through grief. But she is not setting out to become an artist. It happens under the tutelage of others.
And you also immersed yourself within the DEA, too, because you had
Yes.
to keep true to life.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Robin. I was introduced to a former undercover DEA agent who was working in Brooklyn. And when he walked through the door, I was meeting him, and he was just an immensely colorful character in the way he spoke, the language that he used, and he gave me so much information. He was marvelous as far as being so authentic. And because a novelist has to do research, and people think that, and I know we're going to get to writing, that we write about what we know, but we're really writing about what we don't know.
And so does the art of Maddie is it something like, is it your writing? Is your writing like her art? Is it the same thing?
In a way it is. I think that any art really is self-expression. So what Maddie finds is that she needs some place to put this grief. Where does she put this grief that she's walking around with for 5 years? What does she do with it? And what do any of us do with grief? And what she discovers is that if she moves to the canvas, if she paints, then something happens that begins to give her the slightest bit of pleasure, and that's where the guilt comes in.
That is so insightful. I think you've hit on something that we see all the time, but I don't know that anybody's ever put it in words like you're doing now. I mean, whenever you go to like an art museum and you're admiring the art, and then you read the little biographies of the artists or the long biographies if you have them, I mean, it seems like it contributed, whatever grief they went through in their lives, contributed to that art. And it's not just paintings, it's authors, it's musicians, it's kind of all of the arts, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it really is going deep. When I was at the Morgan Library and I came across the drawing by Kollwitz, and it was of a grieving mother, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I'm writing about. And I thought, I must find out about this artist. I have to find out what is her legacy that she's given not only to Germany, but of course to the world. Yeah. And I studied her.
And you kind of have a parallel with the story, because originally you are a poet and you do writings of a poet, but now all of a sudden you're into this world of writing prose, and that had to be so opposite of what you've done.
Yes. I am a poet. I'm still writing poetry, and I give readings and have poems published. And I love poetry. I think that poetry, as well as writing narrative, as writing prose, they really do complement each other, because poetry certainly has to do with love of language. It has to do with rhythm and energy on the page. And when I'm reading something out loud, prose, I could hear if the rhythm is off. I could hear if perhaps the language just doesn't work in that sentence. And I think that has to do with being a poet.
So when you're writing, whether it's poetry or prose, and you slip into that place that only you can get to, is it a surprise for you? Like when you find yourself there, or is it a surprise that you're not there when you're done? Like, do you not even realize you had visited that place in order to do your art, which is writing?
That's such a good question, because as a former dancer, of course, there's discipline involved. So when I sit down to write, it's not as if I know what is going to come to the page. It's not as if that I'm aware of the zone that I'm in. But when I'm sitting down and I'm writing, I go to this place that is deep, and it's quite satisfying, I have to say. When I stopped dancing, I wondered if I was going to find something that would give me the most satisfaction that I had experienced as a dancer, as a choreographer, and that was a troublesome time for me. I had to find this other way.
And I think that what you're talking about right there is what separates the true artists from... and the true authors, and I'm not meaning to belittle anybody, but the people who follow a formula don't ever go to that place. And going to that place, it takes, I don't know how you could teach somebody to do that. But I do think it's a human thing, and I also think that, and I want to get to the part about women writers, and I think it's a human thing, although we do take with us probably whatever society has made us feel about our own gender, our own who we are, not just gender, but race and age and everything.
Yeah, I think that writing gives us an opportunity to find out what we didn't know we knew. And if you think about that for a moment, it does give us a chance to clarify our thoughts. It gives us a chance to reflect on the page, and it helps us move in a way that we might just not be able to do if we don't get out of our heads.
Well, going back to you being a choreographer, and you see the dancers and they're going to do a particular piece, can you tell if some of the dancers are just trying too hard and you have to advise them to just loosen up a little bit?
Well, that's also a good question, because when dancers decide to become a professional, and they know that people are coming they're coming to watch them perform, there's an obligation to put everything out there. But of course, the audience is not seeing how the dancers, sweat before when they're taking classes, all that energy that is going into training their body, because the body then is the tool for the self-expression. So that body has to be in such great shape and so refined, just as the writer has to be training that writing muscle.
Oh, that's a keen observation. I love that comparison.
So as a dancer, if you don't dance for a while, does the skill level... is it affected by not dancing? And is the same thing true for writing? If you're not writing for a while, does the skill level change?
You bet. You bet it does. Because first of all, the body needs to be really honed. The body needs to be trained. And if you stop taking your class, if you stop your, let's say, exercise, your training, then the body is not going to respond as quickly to what it needs to do. Of course, there's muscle memory, too. You can certainly go back. I mean, even in this day, I'm dancing around the kitchen. I love moving. I'm into yoga. I'm a big walker, all of that. So I need to use my body. But if a writer decides that she's going to just write the story all in her head and not move to the page, that is going to be so cumbersome to carry around all those characters with you and all those words with you. Even, for instance, sometimes when I'm putting my head on the pillow at night and what I think is this great line slips into my brain, and I'm hoping I'm just going to remember it the next morning.
Right.
Believe me, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You have to write it down.
When you give your writers' workshops, do you talk to the people you're lecturing first, and then do you disseminate between whether they have a talent or a gift?
I do believe that everyone is gifted. I started Women Reading Aloud 15 years ago. I had invited, I put some publicity out in our local newspaper, and I invited then 12 women writers of all different levels of writing all different genres, and they came and sat around my dining room table. And that was 15 years ago. And it's still called Women Reading Aloud. But it is about the writing process. And since that time, we've become now an internationally known organization. We're a nonprofit organization, and I lead retreats in the United States as well as Greece and France, and also now I will be going to Prague in 2019. So to answer the question, there are writers, I think, in all of us. There's a writer in all of us. Whether that writer wants to hone the craft or not, then that's the difference between someone thinking about it and perhaps enjoying journaling, which is a marvelous and wonderful way to self-express, but honing the craft and working at it, just as a dancer works at her body, then the writer has to work at her craft and hone the craft.
Have you ever found yourself reading, maybe not a book, but let's say an article in a newspaper or a magazine, and then as you're reading it, you're wondering if the writer is male or female? And then you look back at the name, and it'll be a name like, let's see, what's a like Pat or something. You just, I still don't know. You still don't know with some names. So I do that a lot, and then I ask myself, I wonder why I wondered. Why did the sex of the person writing this make a difference to me at some point? I was just curious.
Well, it does in the marketing world of publishing, I think, that if you look at the New York Times bestseller list, the top 10, probably 70% are male writers. And that doesn't mean that there are not just as fine female writers. But there is a difference in how a male writer and a female writer are accepted into today's publishing industry, which is why sometimes, you make a very good point, Larry, because some female writers are actually just using initials just to fool people
Right.
like us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly why they're doing it, so that we're not coming to that novel, let's say, or that poetry with any kind of projection. Oh, this is written by a male, or this is written by a female. This is written by an artist, is what we should be saying.
And that was like almost a century ago. Some of the great novels were written by women, but they used their initials or took on a man's name. And I don't think it was so much as the regular people that read, that enjoyed reading, but of their peers, because they were afraid that they would be blasted by the successful male writers and not even have a chance before the public got to read their books.
Yes, and I was just reading that there is a writer who just received a very prestigious award in London, and what she opened her acceptance speech by saying, "I know that male writers are asked what they believe, and female writers are asked what they feel." And isn't that interesting?
Very.
And why is that? I mean, that has to be some type of observation on our society today.
Okay. I wonder why, and I wonder if a male writer writes what he feels just as much as the female writer writes what she believes.
I don't know. I think that I like to think that for myself as a female writer that I'm writing what I believe. I'm putting into the characters what they believe, but also, of course, what they feel. And we could discuss endlessly about feelings and beliefs.
You know what I wonder, and you're the perfect person to ask this. When you are writing a male character, and I hope they don't take this the wrong way, but are you a man at that moment? Like, are you, like when a male writer writes a female character, is he a woman at that moment? Is he so into it? Like, is his psyche so attuned to that character? Does he understand what it is to be a woman, or is it a stretch to say that?
No, I think that the answer would be yes. You have to get into the skin of the character, male or female. So when I have a character in Matter of Chance, a prominent character, a male character, the detective John Dorfini. So I had to get inside his skin. How would he speak? How would he move? And he's going to move differently than a female. He's going to speak differently. But of course, all male characters are going to be doing the same thing as far as moving differently or speaking differently according to their own rhythms and what they choose. But the answer is a definite yes. So the gender almost becomes insignificant as far as what is the responsibility as the writer. The writer has to be true. The writer has to make the reader feel that this is indeed a male speaking or this is indeed a female speaking. And that's the fun, actually, of being a writer, is imagining all of this. But I'm using imagination and marrying it, of course, with reality.
You created Writing to Heal. Is that for just members of the medical profession, or is it for their patients, too?
I have been working with cancer patients and their caregivers for over 9 years at the Carol G. Simon Cancer Center, part of a huge metropolitan hospital out here on the East Coast. And what I use the same method, which is the Amherst Writers and Artists method. I bring writers that I tell them that no matter how they are feeling and what they're going through, when they walk through the door into the room where I'm giving a workshop, I will view them as writers, because that raises the bar. They forget what their difficulties are that are just sitting in their heads, and they move those difficulties and those medical problems, and for some of them, life and death issues, onto the page. And I must tell you, it's a part of my work that is so incredibly satisfying.
The book we're really not focusing completely on the book, but Julie Maloney wrote a book called A Matter of Chance. That's how we kind of started the interview. And I was just looking at the listing on Amazon, and it's doing really well. First of all, the reviews are outstanding, but the numbers, if you want to talk about that just for a second, in the psychological category, it's number 349. 349 out of millions of books. That's pretty impressive. And it's only a week old.
I didn't even know that. It's not even a week. It's like, I didn't even know that, actually.
Oh, my gosh.
Thank you. And actually, this week, I have to just put this in because it's so exciting, is that Us Weekly has just chosen it as a spring pick. And so I'm
see, that's
excited.
awesome. That'll help catapult it. Plus, I think just everything you're saying is so intriguing and so deep that I think that's probably why. I think that's what we want. We want something deep. And the story itself, I mean, the story in this book is it's so different. I don't think I've ever heard. It's not predictable in any way. There's a sadness to it.
Yes.
But there's also a celebration going on, I guess, an emotional celebration.
Oh, yeah, I love this conversation, actually. Thank you so much, Larry and Robin, because this is a multi-layered book. I say that this is more than a story of abduction. This is a story of transformation, as well as a story of finding compassion and how hope replaces loss. And what happens to the person left behind when tragedy strikes? I really wanted to investigate that in my own mind, because we're always focused, of course, on the victim or on the person who's been taken from us. But what about the person left behind? What happens to her?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You are very insightful in your writing and also in encouraging other writers to go for their dreams. Being a parent, are you able to do that freely with your own children? Because I know with my children, there was always that fear that, they have to maybe do this to be self-sufficient in life. Do you find there's a wall there?
I think it's important for our children to be independent. I have 3 children. I have 6 grandchildren. And they are scattered around the country. And I actually am having a book launch party on Sunday, and they're flying in, so it's very exciting for me to have them there. I would like to think that you should bring my children actually on next week. How well did I do?
Really?
But I would like to think that my children understand the importance of self-expression, of freedom within boundaries. And I always say to all my students that we find freedom within discipline. And so that the more we write and we give ourselves freedom, if we're structuring our time so that we can write, there's tremendous freedom within there. But as far as my children, I think they would probably say that they've had a good childhood, that they would say I was someone who did give them the importance and the acknowledgement of the importance of having a voice.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
Does that discipline have to be self-imposed, or can it come from external sources like a teacher? You're gonna have to write now. It's 4:00.
Well, I think if the teacher, I think that if the teacher does it all with kindness, if there is kindness there, I think we can go so far. I know when someone is kind to me, and even when someone is critiquing my work, and I know this is completely professional, and because we all need critiques and we need early readers when we're writing, but if it's done with kindness, and then I think that we respond to kindness as human beings. We do.
I like that answer.
I mean, if there are children, and when children are in school and they have a teacher that they love, I can guarantee you it's because there's kindness there.
Wow. I think you are absolutely right about that. Julie, what an enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
I found A Matter of Chance on Amazon. And do you have a website you want to direct us to?
I do. It's juliemaloney.net. They can find me there, and I'm all over social media, Julie Maloney.
juliemaloney.net. Julie, thank you so much, and come back anytime.
I'd love it. Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Chris Foster. The fired FBI Director James Comey says President Trump is morally unfit for office, but he doesn't want him impeached.
Impeaching and removing Donald Trump from office would let the American people off the hook and have something happen indirectly that I believe they're duty-bound to do directly. People in this country need to stand up and go to the voting booth and vote their values.
Comey on ABC's 2020 promoting his new book. President Trump on Twitter calls Comey disgruntled and claims he committed many crimes. An American pastor is on trial in Turkey.
Andrew Craig Brunson is a 50-year-old evangelical from North Carolina, now facing up to 35 years in prison for alleged links to both an outlawed Kurdish insurgent group and the U.S.-based Muslim